Hi guys, Juliet Jeske, Decoding Fox News here. We're going to try something new I've never done before. I'm going to go through the entire town hall that was on Hannity and just kind of fact check it in real time, go through it in real time. And I'm listening to it in these earphones, which if you're listening to audio, you can't see it, but I have earphones on. And it's on the screen. So as he goes through, I'm going to comment on it. And then basically I'm going to take both video feeds and cut them together, splice them together. Some of it I will be editing out because it's just not anything that would be interesting to you, because a lot of it is Hannity blathering on, which he tends to do. One of the funny things about him that I want to point out before we start is notice how leading his questions are. Like, he doesn't just say, like, how will you handle inflation? It's always like, when you were president and you did such a great job with the economy, and we had more jobs and more prosperity than we've ever had in the history of this country. And I looked up to you. I mean, like, that's how ridiculous his questions are. I've clocked him at like 2 minutes, 2.5 minutes. I'm not kidding. Like, that's ridiculous to ask a question and spend that long of a time doing it. But that's how he does it. He just sets him up. He basically preps Trump for the exact question that he wants to get out of Trump. And I will try to also point out when I see a clear edit, because this has been previously recorded and edited. So again, I will cut some of this out because it's not worth listening to or sharing. If you want to see the whole thing, I'm sure you can find it online, because I'm sure, you know, the folks at Fox are not going to hide this away. So it opens up in like an arena of sorts. They don't really say where specifically. And they have blocked off one half of the room. These are all people who were invited who are Trump supporters. So this is a very specific crowd because they knew what they're coming to. This is Fox. This is Trump. This is Hannity. They do a pan of the crowd, and it's very clear that it's all white, pretty much, for the most part. It's just white, 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 and white. It's very fashy. When I say fashy, I mean like fascist. Because during this entire interview, because he's talking about mail-in voting right now, it's not important. But during this entire interview, it's not really done like a proper town hall. What it is they're just cheering Trump on. It's just Trump, just to give Trump an audience is what this is. At this point, Hannity shows a Trafalgar poll. Now, Trafalgar poll was the one that in the midterms was like laughably wrong. They called so many states wrong, it's not even funny. And one of the things they've been pushing a lot this week on Fox is the idea that all of a sudden, out of nowhere, Kamala Harris is doing miserably in the polls. Like, everything's collapsing for her. That's not true. I mean, you can look it up yourself.
The race, according to polls, is close in 7 states. The latest Trafalgar poll has Donald Trump up by 2 in this state of Pennsylvania. This state could very well decide the entire race. Nationwide, the Real Clear Politics average shows statistically it is close, a tie in these states. Meanwhile, left-leaning statistician Nate Silver is giving President Trump a 58% chance of winning the Electoral College. But that, too, remains.
Now, if you're watching this on video, you're not losing your mind. This has been sped up because who cares? He's just blathering on about, like, Trump is amazing. I love Trump. Trump, oh my gosh, look at Trump. He's going to win. Everybody loves Trump. That's basically Hannity. And that's showing Kamala going up, to the airplane with the earbuds in. Oh my goodness. She can't have earbuds in when she goes up to the plane. And there she is with Tim Walz. So yeah, this is just a bunch of nonsense. And he's just praising and praising and praising. It's so laughable that anybody on Fox would complain about other media and how they treat candidates, because Fox doesn't really even promote, they don't even try to hide the fact that they're all in the tank for Trump. This leader, yeah, this is great. Not spooky at all to see a crowd like shaking their fists and screaming for him. And they have these weird props in the back. You'll see there's like some sort of light construction equipment. I have no idea. They never explain that. There's no reason. There's just sort of like, ooh, look, it's sort of like a thresher or something behind them. And we're speeding this up. You don't need to hear this. Trust me. You don't need to hear this. And the huge, giant American flag behind them. And it kind of looks like a boxing ring where there's like 4 corners. Okay, here we go. I'm going to let you hear some of it.
Thank you, David. nice crowd.
I would say
It's a big crowd.
You know,
Of course, Trump is talking about his crowd size because it's like super important to him.
I mentioned we had this terrible shooting in Georgia.
Right.
Our prayers are with our friends in Georgia. And I've been doing town halls and interviews in public with you for all these years since you got into the political arena. And I told this audience, never before have restrictions been so tight, obviously after the assassination attempt as well. And Director Ray said the threat level has never been this bad. He said it 5 consecutive times before Congress. What is going on?
Well, it's a sick and angry world for a lot of reasons.
So this is more of his like persecution complex. Obviously, it's just again like, yeah, there was an assassination attempt and that's awful. Nobody should be trying to harm any elected official. I don't care how much I hate them. We should never have that. But again, they're sort of leaning into it like, oh, these restrictions have never been so. It's like, no, it's kind of always like this. And this idea of like, it's all because Trump is like magical. Basically, that's what I got from that.
And we're going to make it better. We're going to heal our world. We're going to get rid of all these wars that are starting all over the place because of incompetent American leadership. And we're going to make it better. You know, Viktor Orban made a statement. They said, bring Trump back and we won't have any problems. He was...
I just want to note that we are 5 minutes into this disaster, and he's mentioned Viktor Orban, the first dictator, or kind of wannabe dictator, of the evening. If I'm talking over him, trust me, you're not missing anything useful or eventful. He just rambles.
So we're going to be, I think we're going to be very well set up to do a great job. And do we love Pennsylvania? Do we love it?
So again, they're cutting to the crowd. I saw one black person, that is one. And it's a pretty big crowd. It's just a bunch of white folks, exactly what you'd expect. And again, the fist up, cheering, very fashy, very creepy. Hannity smiling, Trump is smiling, because again, a crowd who adores him. What's not to love, for him at least?
Between...
I just wanted to play a little bit of that because it's kind of haunting. It's awful. And it's like dark in the arena and they're just screaming with their fists up. Yikes. Creepy.
One thing I'll say is that we did great in 2016. We did much better in 2020. We got millions of more votes. But there has never been enthusiasm like we have now. I mean, I see it all over. There's never been anything like it. And I hear the polls are very close, and we have a little lead, and a little. I just find it hard to believe because, first of all, they've been so bad. They've done such a bad job, but that's why the enthusiasm's so good, because they never had anything to compare it by. You know, I ran, and I didn't have anything at all. I just was a successful businessman, and we did a good campaign. But the next time we had something special. We could talk about what we did, but we never could imagine we'd have borders where 20 million people have poured into our country.
Okay, 20 million is a completely made up number.
Many criminals from all over the world are coming into our country.
That is a lie.
They're coming from jails, from...
You have no proof of that?
Not just South America, from all over the world. They're coming in at levels that nobody's ever seen. They're coming from prisons. They're allowing prisoners to come out of all countries. Almost 180 countries represented over the last...
Yeah, there are 180 countries. There are.
Number of months, 180. Most people don't know that you have that many countries.
Oh, no, they know. You can look that up.
Emptying out their prisons and jails. They're emptying out their mental institutions and insane
That is not true.
They're emptying out the sickest people, and they're emptying all into the United States. And you said it better than anybody. More terrorists have...
Why would they do this? What is this sort of plan? They all got together, 180 countries got together?
Come into the United States in the last 3 years, and I think probably 50 years. There's never been anything like it. These people are so bad. They're so dangerous.
That's a drinking game. Never been anything like it. You'll be on the floor.
One, you'd have not 20 million, you'll have 100 million people. You won't have Social Security, you won't have Medicare, you won't have anything already. If you take a look at the numbers, they're filling up and loading up Social Security, Medicare with illegal immigrants that have come into our country, many of them from jails and many of them from very bad places. And we're not going to destroy our country, Sean.
So I'm going to save you some of the brutality of this festival of xenophobia. But basically what Sean Hannity does there is he goes down a list of countries that he thinks are dangerous, and all these people are coming from these countries that are dangerous, and they're not coming here to do any good. And then, as you saw there, Trump takes this number of 20 million undocumented migrants in this country. That is pulled from thin air. That's his imagination. There's no basis for that anywhere. You'll never find that number on anything official. Customs and Border Patrol would never say that. Nobody would say that. But Trump just insists it's 20 million. It's going to change in a second. Then he also says that 20 million is going to turn into 100 million. Wow, that's amazing. And that this 100 million, which would be about a little less than a third of our country, would somehow drain our resources through Social Security, which, of course, they're not eligible for, and Medicaid. And in Medicare or Medicaid, in some states, that's allowable under certain conditions, but in most states, it's not. And of course, he completely acts as if all these people just come in here and just sit, that they don't actually work, that they don't actually have jobs, which of course they do. But again, it's this idea of an invasion of these evil, basically non-white people is what he's pushing.
Me illegal immigrants. What is your, well, I can play your tape. I'll play that maybe after your answer, but what is your reaction to you've spoken to some of the families of lovers.
I said at the beginning, I said, I heard they were going to have open borders. They want open borders. She wants open borders. Now she's all of a sudden saying, oh, I think we'll close the borders. She was the border czar, whether you like it or not. But even if you don't want to use that term, she was in charge of the border. It's the worst border in the history of the world, not just here. There's never been a country that allowed 21 million people to come in over a 3-year period.
Okay, and in a short span of this crazy town hall, he went from 20 million to now it's 21 million. I have no idea why he added the extra million. He said 18 million in the past. Hannity just said 11 million.
There's never been. And 21 million people, many of whom are from prisons, many of whom are murderers and drug dealers and child traffickers. And by the way, women traffickers. Women trafficking is the biggest, and they're traffickers in women. And they're coming in now, and they're putting them in our Social Security accounts, and they're putting them in our Medicare. And just one thing, if you take a look over the last week, I said this was going to happen, and it's happening, because these people are tougher than our criminals. Our criminals are nice people by comparison. That's the only good thing. We're showing how nice our criminals are. They came from 22 people recently came from the Congo in Africa. Where do you come from? Prison. What did you do? We refuse to say. We're letting everybody in. We're letting everybody in. Take a look at Aurora in Colorado.
The story about Aurora, Colorado, of the migrants taking over the apartment complex was debunked. I was one of many people who debunked it. I used some footage from a Fox affiliate, which is kind of hilarious, in Aurora, Colorado, where the residents of this building came out and said, yeah, none of this happened. This is not what's happening. The management they just don't want to do any repairs, so they're blaming it on these sort of like migrant gangs that don't exist or really aren't the problem. So now he's just playing that up. And, again, 21 million. They're coming from prisons. It's just fear-mongering, xenophobia, hate, hate, hate. That's what he is. That's the chaos maker. Here we go.
Where Venezuelans are taking over the whole town. They're taking over buildings, the whole town. And the sheriff, who can blame them? I mean, they have AK-47s. You saw it the other day. They're knocking down doors and occupying apartments of people. The people are petrified. And it's getting worse and worse. You look at New York, Chicago, Los Angeles, and now you look at all over the place. You take a look at Iowa, Idaho, places that never had the problem. They're pouring in. 21 million people, that's bigger than New York. And we have to stop it. And we have to do the largest deportation in the history of...
So what's scary there is that line got the biggest applause. And the crowd goes completely crazy because they're like, oh, yeah, we get to deport people. They forget that that's going to cost money, that you're going to disrupt entire industries, that you're going to break up families. You know, they don't care. It's just hate, just pure hate. So this section is Trump getting really worked up about the fact that people call him and J.D. Vance weird. It's completely useless. I just want to point out that so far in this fairly short town hall, Trump has brought up immigration twice and brought up the fact that they were going to take Social Security and Medicaid away twice. He's brought this up. They really haven't talked about anything else. It's just they're going to take away your Social Security because they're all going to eat it up. This 20 million, that becomes 21 million, which becomes 100 million. It's all a bunch of nonsense. They don't qualify for any of this. But again, he's just repeating himself. And then he starts ranting about how, oh, they call me weird.
I happen to be a very solid rock. We're not weird. We're other things, perhaps, but we're not weird. But he is a weird guy. He walks on the stage. There's something wrong with that guy. And
as Trump is calling Tim Walz weird, you know, he's covered in this crazy copper-colored makeup and his hair is flopping around. He looks like an idiot. So, okay.
I mean, it's very simple.
Let's play Kamala in her own words on the issue of immigration.
So they play a few minutes of Kamala Harris making comments about immigration.
So, and now she wants to offer a path to citizenship, which by any definition would be amnesty. Your reaction?
But, well, before you even start with that, of course it's ridiculous. You can't do it. No country could sustain this. But she wants no fracking in Pennsylvania. She wants no fracking.
Now he's talking about fracking. He just jumps to fracking out of nowhere.
She said it 100 times.
She didn't say it 100 times.
There will be no fracking. There will be no fracking. There will be no fracking. Then just recently she said, yes, I could approve fracking. Look, this is a woman who is dangerous. I don't think too smart, but let's see. But she loses her train of thought a lot.
You just did. He's talking about immigrants, and you just start talking about fracking. So in this section here, he just kind of starts making fun of Kamala Harris, talking about the interview with Dana Bash on CNN. Then he sort of wanders over to, oh, I'm going to talk about the debate I had with Joe Biden. And then he's like, oh, then he calls it an interview at one point. Then he starts talking about the primary that Kamala Harris is in and how she came in last. Then he goes back to the debate with Joe Biden. This is just a rambling mess that doesn't make any sense. And, you know, the crowd actually looks bored. They pan to the crowd and they look a little bored. And again, these are just personal complaints that don't make any sense. And that's all he's doing. So I've cut some of this out because there's no point to hear it.
And I hate mosquitoes. I'm surprised. I didn't think we had. We don't like those mosquitoes running around. We want nothing to do with them. But New Hampshire was so badly treated by the Democrat Party and by Joe Biden and her. I can't imagine New Hampshire voting for him. Anybody in New Hampshire, because they're watching right now, but anybody in New Hampshire that votes for Biden and Kamala.
Why do people, just gonna blow your mind, Trump. People from New Hampshire don't care about the primary. Most people don't care. They don't even know when it is. Most people don't vote in it, of either party.
I really think, I call her a comrade, Kamala, because that's what her ideology is.
Now, he spends a lot of time on New Hampshire, which is completely stupid because I don't think anybody cares. And it sort of shows you how his brain and everything is just disintegrating before our eyes. Like he goes on for minutes about New Hampshire.
He didn't want to play the New Hampshire game. And so he went to a different state. We won't mention. It's a great state. I won it by a lot. I love that state. But he dumped New Hampshire. And I said to people today, who the hell from New Hampshire would vote for this guy? He changed the whole primary system. He changed the whole system because he took them out of the order. I think it's going to have a big effect.
You're not going to win New Hampshire.
We really want to win New Hampshire. I've done well there, and we really want to win New Hampshire.
Let me go back to the issue, and it's a big issue in the state of Pennsylvania. and you mentioned it. And let me just tell the audience, so everybody is fully aware, is that tonight Fox offered a debate opportunity between you and Kamala Harris, and I was not going to be here, but it was going to be Brett and Martha.
This was supposed to be a debate.
Right. So
I would have preferred.
I figured.
I think he's a nice guy, but I would have preferred a debate.
Thanks a lot.
But this is the best we could do, Sean.
Oh, I know. It's shocking that Kamala Harris would not want to appear on a propaganda network that got sued.
You're stuck with me.
Praising sycophant interview with a live audience.
No, let me though play, because the big issue in this state is the issue of banning fracking.
Now we're talking about. I wonder if there was an edit there. I didn't see it, but like, why? Now we're talking about banning fracking again.
In that, I thought it was a horrible interview and a missed opportunity. Do you know, for 16 minutes, she spoke for 16 minutes and 29 seconds. And that whole interview, the only interview, you and J.D. Vance have done, this is your 36th interview or press conference between the two of you. And
who cares how many interviews he does? He just lies through the whole thing.
we don't know if she supports the Green New Deal she co-sponsored with Bernie Sanders that would cost $93 trillion. We don't know if she stands by that. We don't know if she supports Medicare for all that would eliminate all private health.
She said she does not.
We don't know if she would really ban fracking.
She said she is not.
She said, well, I said in 2020 that, I would not ban fracking. CNN had to fact check her and say, no, she never said it. This is what she really said.
So they are recycling a clip of Kamala Harris saying she would ban fracking from 2019. They've already shown this already in the town hall. They're just showing it again.
The lifeblood of the world's economy.
So he talks about fracking again, basically says, oh, Kamala Harris is going to ban fracking. And this is just repeat. There's nothing of substance in this town hall. It's just the same crap. And he basically says, oh, yeah. And then he says this.
You have somebody that's not going to allow fracking. She's not going to allow it. You can't take the chance. You have no choice. You've got to vote for me. You've got to vote for me. You got to. Even if you don't like me, you know. Yeah. It's no, but even if you don't like me,
We are 22 minutes in. So far, all we've heard is that a bunch of lies about immigration, a bunch of lies about fracking, and a bunch of old clips of Kamala Harris. And he's doing the accordion hands. Accordion hands. Woo! So this whole section is, oh, Kamala Harris's last interview was short. And then they talk about, should they stand or sit at the debate? And then, oh, she probably was given the answers during her interview before she had the interview. Baseless, totally stupid. Whining about how they're going to do the debate, if they're going to be standing or sitting. This is inane. We're at a first commercial break, and they've talked about absolutely nothing. He repeated the lies about prison. They're releasing all these people from prison. He repeated this stupid story about Congo. Now they're giving him a standing O because you deserve that. More footage of Kamala. I'm literally going to go through this whole thing, and I'm going to add up how many times they showed her. And she's saying that we shouldn't use the phrase global Islamic terrorism. And they're like, oh, my God, we can't use bigoted statements. What? So here's more clip of Kamala. I'm just going to speed all of this up because, again, trust me, you don't need it. And then we move on to Dave McCormick, who is the senatorial candidate in Pennsylvania. He's a Republican, so they sort of introduce him. He's in the crowd. He waves. Yay, look at that. And then they go back to Trump, and this is back to the town hall.
We have October 7th. People saw it. We have things going.
October 7th was in Israel.
With Israel and with the Middle East is blowing up. It's blowing up. We have Ukraine and Russia that would.
See, now okay, so again, this is a bunch of nonsense because he has absolutely no idea what would have happened or what wouldn't have happened.
It never happened, and everybody knew it. Iran was broke. They didn't have the money for Hamas and for Hezbollah. They didn't have the money for.
So this is from my last fact check of Trump. This is a common line. This will probably come up in the debate. So here we go. Iran wasn't broke. During Trump's administration, even with U.S. sanctions, Iran still traded with other countries, including Venezuela and China. When Trump withdrew from the Obama-era nuclear agreement, Iran was free to resume its nuclear program. At the very end of his presidency, a leaked UN document showed a sharp increase in Iran's stockpile of enriched uranium. Trump can also not claim with any certainty that Hamas wouldn't have attacked Israel if he was president at the time. One reason Hamas has given for the timing of its attack was the internal political divisions within Israel, which had absolutely nothing to do with the United States, which is true. That came down to Israeli Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu wanting to reform the judiciary, basically to save his own skin. And there was, very, very large number of Israelis were angry about this, and there were protests all over the country.
For anybody, they wanted to get by, and we would have made a fair deal with them. I was only looking to make a fair deal with them. But, I wanted to say it so much during my term. We went 4 years without any blow-ups. We had no World Trade Center blow-up.
So this is also from my fact check. He basically just said we had no terrorist attack during his administration. He said that a few times. He is incorrect. 2017, a mass murder in New York City, which killed 8 people in support of ISIS, labeled a terrorist attack by the Department of Justice. 2017, a white supremacist traveled to New York City and killed a black man in an attempt to start a race war. He pleaded guilty to multiple charges, including furtherance of an act of terrorism. 2018, a Trump supporter in Florida mailed pipe bombs to members of the media and prominent Democrats. No one was harmed, but the Department of Justice also labeled it as a domestic terrorist attack. 2019, a member of Saudi Arabia's military and longtime associate of al-Qaeda killed 3 U.S. service members on a military base in Florida. The Department of Justice concluded that the suspect was motivated by jihadist ideology. 2019, a gunman killed 23 people at a Walmart in El Paso, Texas, in a racially motivated mass shooting. The shooter intentionally targeted Latinos. The DOJ also labeled this massacre as an act of domestic terrorism.
Radical Islamic terror. We had no radical Islamic terror because we were very tough at the borders and we were very tough with our statements, and we had the whole world was a safe place. That was the question they asked Viktor Orban, who's really considered a very strong. They said he's a strong man. Sometimes you need a strong man.
Dictator again. We just mentioned a dictator again.
He's a strong man. He's the prime minister of Hungary. And he said, you bring back Trump, everybody. Now, I'm not saying it, but he said it.
He says, this is what he says in his rallies all the time. I'm not saying it. He said it. We just got to bring back Trump.
Because I'd rather say respect. But he said, everybody was afraid of Trump. You bring him back, you're not going to have any problems. It's all going to go away. The world is blowing up.
It's another standing ovation for no reason. Not fascist at all.
And Sean, one thing? Yeah. The world is blowing up. And when you look at Ukraine and you look at Russia, you look at all the things that are happening, we are potentially getting ready. I'm telling you, and I've made a lot of predictions, and this is not a prediction because it's so bad. I don't want it to be a prediction. We're heading into World War III territory. And
so we are in 27 minutes, and World War III is mentioned.
I'm the one that bought them, and we rebuilt our entire military.
We did not rebuild our entire military in 4 years.
I hated the upgrade, hated it, was the nuclear program, and I understand it maybe better than anybody. My uncle was at MIT, a professor, the longest-serving professor in the history of MIT.
He was not the longest-serving professor at MIT. That has been debunked. But this is Sean Hannity taking a solid minute to ask a question. Look how leading this is.
Yeah, let me ask you a more personal question, because you paid a very big price for getting into the political arena. Never mind opportunity costs that you would have had. You've had a successful business. Obviously, you've been a victim of lawfare, if you will, or a weaponized Department of Justice. Although the Supreme Court ruling on immunity, I think, was very clear, although certain judges may not abide by it.
Yeah.
And I listened to you talk about the borders. I listened to you talk about how dangerous the world situation is. I listened to you talk about the economy and fracking and the need for energy, and I hear you. And then I ask myself, okay, why is this different? If 2016 was about the forgotten man and forgotten woman, what is 2024 about?
So it's not that different. It's still about the forgotten man and the forgotten woman. The people are being treated horribly in this country. We're a country that's being laughed at all over the world. And I'll be honest, if Joe Biden would be a great president, I would be happier than being the worst president in the history
No, you don't want to go to prison.
of our country, because I want to see what's good for the country. And I would have been very happy. I have very nice places I could be. This is not easy. I got shot at. You know, I mean, I got hit. I got hit. I could have been all over that place. I could have. But you know what? It's very simple. And it starts with make America great again. That's what we have to do.
What the hell was that? You didn't answer the question at all. He basically just praises you for like 2 minutes. What do you want for 2024? And you're just like, make America great again. And they start cheering. This is maddening. Oh, my goodness.
It makes me think that if you look at everything that we discussed tonight, and you look at your platform.
Thank you. Thank you.
What really infuriates me, and I'm straightforward. I'm a member of the press, but I'm a talk show host. I'm a conservative, and people know where I stand. I think the press, they're all liberal talk show hosts, but they're dishonest about who they are, and they have an agenda. They've never played Kamala in her own words, her radical statements, her extreme statements, I think dangerous statements.
You just showed them. They've never shown Kamala in her own words. You just showed several clips of her. I'm sorry.
And I just think that if we're talking about the border, all of these 11 million, it was all preventable. I think on the economy, if you had sound economic policy, you handed off 1.4% inflation, we'd be doing better in the economy. We'd be energy dominant by now because we were on a path towards energy dominance. We wouldn't have to, Iran was in check. You had them on the verge of bankruptcy. Russia, you had a relationship with them, and North Korea and the mullahs in Iran.
But nobody was tougher with Russia than me. I shut down the biggest pipeline in the world that Russia was building. It was called Nord Stream 2. Nobody ever heard of it.
Okay, now we're going through it. He did not shut down the Nord Stream pipeline. He did not have the power to shut down the Nord Stream pipeline.
And I said, no way. I said to Germany, there's no way we're going to protect you with NATO and spend billions of dollars protecting Europe, and you guys are going to be buying oil from the person and the group that we're protecting you from. And I shut it down. It was 100% shut down.
Germany had the power to shut down the Nord Stream pipeline, not you.
And then this pathetic person comes in, and he immediately approves it, but he shut down the Keystone XL pipeline, our pipeline.
Which was an extension of a pipeline from Canada to export oil out of Canada. So he goes on and on. I'm speeding up this section about Keystone XL pipeline and the jobs, and this is very inaccurate stuff. He's lying about pretty much everything. Goes back to Nord Stream pipeline.
It's the toughest on Russia. Putin would even say, you know, if you're not the toughest guy, you're killing us.
Our intelligence community said that Russia was interfering in our election, and you said, well, you know what? Putin said we weren't. They weren't. So I believe Putin. You believed a dictator of a hostile foreign country over your own intelligence community.
I'd hate to see you if you were really tough. This was the biggest job they've ever had, and I stopped it. And you know what? Russia would have been fine. China would have been fine. China was fine. China paid us hundreds of billions of dollars in taxes and tariffs under me.
Foreign countries do not pay tariffs.
Under no other president, and I mean right from the beginning, did they pay 10 cents.
You know, we're going to get to audience.
So I honestly don't know if he doesn't understand how tariffs work, because he constantly lies about this, or gets it wrong at least. Tariffs are paid by U.S. importers or U.S. companies, and that increased price usually gets passed on to the consumer. So just a little reminder, in the summer of 2020, we had protests and riots all over the country. Then we had, in New York City, we had 800 deaths a day from COVID. We had mass graves on Hart Island. We had corpse trucks by basically every single hospital filled with dead bodies. That was 2020. That was 4 years ago. So for time, we're going to kind of skip over this. They show about, so far in this point in the town hall, they've shown about 3.5 minutes worth of clips of Kamala Harris talking. There are various clips. They're recycling them, so they're using the same clips over and over again. And the one that's probably the most shocking to a Trump voter or somebody from Pennsylvania is the clip from 2019 where she says she's going to ban fracking. And now she's since said, no, I changed my mind on that. I'm not going to ban fracking. But of course, they've shown that at least twice so far. So then Hannity complains that she's only done a 16.5-minute interview because they were taking out the commercials. They've already complained about that. So again, they're just repeating themselves again. And now he's going to turn a question to the crowd.
So on the issue of the economy, how many of you in this room, and you can all close your eyes so you're not looking at your neighbor, have struggled economically in the last number of years? Wow. Wow. And when I started my adult life, I struggled to pay my rent. You know my jobs. I've listed them 100 times, working in the service industry and bartending and cooking and washing dishes and construction.
He's making $35 million a year. It's multiple homes.
Not McDonald's. That was a lie. And
By the way, she didn't work at McDonald's, right?
She did not. Well, there's no evidence of it.
Did she work at McDonald's?
Oh, now they're talking about. Now they're talking about how she didn't work at McDonald's, because that's super important. Because companies, franchises keep records from 40 years ago. So again, for speed, we're just going to go through this. He's talking about taxes.
Gave you the biggest tax cuts in the history of our country.
So false. Ronald Reagan's tax cut in 1981 amounted to 2.89% of the GDP. Trump's tax cut was nearly 0.9% of the GDP. Trump's tax cut was the 8th largest in the past century, but smaller than 2 tax cuts passed during the Obama administration. Trump's tax cut also favored the wealthiest Americans and contributed massively to our debt.
Let the Trump tax cuts expire, which she wants to do. She wants to terminate them. If you do that, you will suffer the biggest tax increase in history. There's never been a tax increase like it. On top of which, she wants to add a lot of tax. This country will end up, and I've said this a lot, and I mean it, this country will end up in a depression.
So now this country will end up in a depression. This country will end up in World War III. We'll have 100 million immigrants. I'm just adding, this is what he does. It's all like, I will save you, everything is terrible. I will save you, everything is terrible. So then he goes through a bunch of doom and gloom. Basically, if you don't elect me, your entire economy is going to go to hell. So elect me or else, even though he can't back up anything he's talking about. There's absolutely no sign that we're headed for a depression. It's just a bunch of nonsense, a bunch of fear-mongering, as per usual.
If they do that, the unrealized capital gain, it's been talked about for a few years by ultra-left Marxists.
So I don't think Trump knows what the word Marxist means. He then attacks Kamala Harris for the political beliefs of her father, which make no sense. And just a brief note about the unrealized capital gains tax. That right now is just an idea, nothing more. I don't know if the bill would get passed. It's supposed to apply to only people who are worth more than $100 million or more. That's very few people. And then thirdly, I would argue, and there's a lot of other people who have argued, that it's not even legal and that it wouldn't survive lawsuits because it is sort of a tax on something you haven't actually earned yet. So I don't know how that would actually feasibly make it through the courts. But there, you can read up about it. But right now, it's just an idea. It's nothing more than that.
Price gauging, as she calls it, or gouging.
Well, she called it gauging.
And what if they implement that and then price controls?
Yeah.
That's been tried in
many times.
The former Soviet Union, Venezuela, even in this country in the 70s. It was a disaster.
Again, it's kind of a vague idea right now. There are anti-price gouging laws at the state level, and it's not always the same thing as price controls, so they're being misleading there. But it's all, again, doom and gloom, doom and gloom, doom and gloom.
Impact. How do high interest rates impact? How does inflation impact everybody that's here?
Well, they can't buy a home. They can't do anything. Your business is stopped up. You can't borrow money. And by the way, I had interest rates at 2%. Now they're 10%, but you can't get the money.
So he didn't have interest rates at anything because the president doesn't set interest rates. And the president is not supposed to interfere with the Federal Reserve. They're supposed to be independent. So The base rate for lending at the Fed right now is 5.5%. Just looked it up. This is from bank rate, so this is more of a retail rate. 30-year fixed rate mortgage is at 6.38%, higher than what a lot of people paid a few years ago, but certainly not 10%. Now, in this little section, I took his words out because he basically says people can't even get the money if they want to get a home loan. That's not true. And I don't know what he's talking about with 10%. And then Sean Hannity says the perfect thing right here.
It really is unbelievable. So we have all of this. Now, let me talk about, in 6 days, you will have probably your only opportunity to debate Kamala Harris.
Yeah.
Now he's just complaining about ABC. Now he's claiming that ABC rigged polls to make it look like he wouldn't win so people wouldn't vote for him.
ABC is the worst network in terms of fairness. They had a poll where I was 17 points down a couple of days prior to the election. I was 17 points down in Wisconsin. And they do that so people don't vote because, you know, hey, I love Trump, but he's 17 points down. I'm not going to go out and vote.
Are we hit any substance yet? Like, did he say anything specific about his tax plan? Who would his tax plan help? What tax group would his tax plan help? He did not discuss that. Nobody asked him that. It's just, I had the biggest in the history of our country. So I've sped this up because he's just complaining about ABC and George Stephanopoulos, which he gives a nickname for, which is stupid. And this is just one big aggrievement. Poor me. They're not fair. Nobody's fair. Everybody hates me. And then he just starts talking about Biden.
I watched his interview of Joe Biden. It was like the softest interview I've ever seen.
Oh, like this isn't the softest interview you've ever seen? Hannity's just praising you. Hannity doesn't push back on anything you've said. Not one single word. So we're going to speed through this section as well. This is an extended rant about ABC and how it's going to be so unfair for him and, oh, the debate and poor me. And people are just going to tune in to watch how unfair it is. And I'm sure they're going to get the questions ahead of time. And Kamala Harris and her husband are best friends with the heads of ABC and yada, yada, yada. It's just one big grievance. Poor me, poor Trump. Oh, my goodness. How must we go on? Nothing about the American people or what he's going to do for them or anything like that. No, just aggrievement. So Hannity broke this up over 2 nights, and this was sort of the end of night 1. We're also going to go through night 2 because it does include the actual questions from audience members, which is what a town hall is supposed to be. And we barely get that. We get 4. I thought it was 3, but we do get 4 questions total. And he's going to introduce a senatorial candidate, a Republican, right here, and then we're just going to go right over that section as well.
Get to the people I want to again introduce. We introduced him last night on the show. Dave McCormick is the Republican Senate candidate from Pennsylvania.
So to spare Trump's answer, so you don't have to listen to him, he basically goes, okay, we need to strengthen our border. We need to be energy independent. I'm going to point out that we're producing more crude oil than we ever have in the history of our country right now. That's actually true, unlike that phrase that he uses all the time. Then he says he's going to rebuild the military. I thought he just did 4 years ago. What's funny about that is he says the military was in shambles when he was president, and then he rebuilt it, and now it's in shambles again. So I guess it doesn't take much for our military to become in shambles, according to him. And then he says we're going to, peace through strength, which is Reagan's line. He's just stealing that from Reagan. That's it. I condensed it. You don't have to hear him.
My name is Deborah Williams.
Hi, Deborah. How are you?
I'm good now.
Hi, Deborah.
Oh, because of me or because of the president? I'm just guessing. No, I'm kidding.
I plead the 5th.
Good answer.
Mr. President, I want to thank you for coming and sharing your time with us today.
Thank you, Deborah.
What could you share that you've learned during the first time being in the Oval Office for those who are hesitant to vote for you now?
Fox News probably views that as a difficult question, so I'm going to paraphrase this for you again to save you from Trump. He basically says, I should have been even better, but the Department of Justice was weaponized against me, even when he was president. And then he starts blaming people he hired. And he says, I didn't hire the best people because I didn't know I wasn't a government person. And I hired these people and they weren't that good. But this time I'm going to hire the best, which is sort of like a nod to Project 2025 in code, because that's exactly what Project 2025 is all about, is they're going to just say, here, these are the proposals that you need to make. And by the way, we have numerous staffing companies that are based in, staffing conservatives in politics, and we're going to give them to you. This is a list of all the people that you should hire, and this is specifically where you should hire them. The only other thing he says in this sort of section is that he defeated ISIS, which is not true because ISIS is still very much a problem in the Middle East.
Thank you.
I'm a small business owner. I'm the owner of Century 21 at the Helm Real Estate.
Good.
The 4 years of your presidency, Mr. Trump, were the best economically I have experienced in the 35 years I own this business. And my question is, what are your plans and policies to restore the economy so small business owners can thrive and make America great once again?
Okay, so here's a quick paraphrase of what he said. He praised Linda McMahon, who was head of the Small Business Administration when he was president, at least for 3 years she was, and she's associated with Worldwide Wrestling. And then he says, oh, you're going to have low interest rates. Now, again, the president doesn't have control over that. Then he says you're going to have low taxes. He would also need Congress for that. And then he says, he just goes on a tangent about, like, there's this person who didn't support me, and he said that he had the best 4 years of his life, but now he's come crawling back, and I don't care. He doesn't name this person. It's kind of ridiculous that he makes this weird tangent about himself, and it's, again, poor me, poor me. And then he says there's a lot of small businesses. That's it.
Sir, what's your name?
Travis Finkenbinder. I'm from Palmyra, Pennsylvania.
Hi.
I'd like to welcome you both here, and it's an honor to stand before you.
Thank you, Trey.
Mr. President, is it possible to correct the extensive damage the current administration has caused related to our safety and security? From the border crisis to the plethora of weapons left behind in Afghanistan, I fear for my 3 adolescent sons. At night, what do I tell Cale, Kate, and Cole about their safety and their future of this great nation?
Now, this answer goes all over the place. It's kind of like beat poetry. So hang in there. Here we go. He answers first that he should pray. He should pray for the world because everybody leading the world right now is stupid. And that gets a huge applause. Then, bizarrely, he pivots to, they are weaponizing the government. They are after me. They are taking my money. They won't let me campaign. Poor me. I have to go to court tomorrow. I have to go to court all the time. That's what they want because these are bad people. Then he says they let 21 million people into this country. Again, where is he getting the number 21 million? They poisoned this country. They're poisoning this country. They're emptying prisons, asylums. If I were president, another pivot, you'd have no inflation. You'd have no war in Ukraine. You'd have no war in Israel. And you'd have no Afghanistan. And then he pivots to Arlington Cemetery, where he gives his warped version of what happened, where he claims people just invited him there. He just showed up. They asked him to take pictures. He said, sure. And that he didn't use them for his campaign. And that wasn't a PR stunt. And how dare you? And that's it. And so, again, all of this is just like, all of that is one long, crazy stream of consciousness answer. And he also says that we left $85 billion worth of equipment in Afghanistan. And he's made that claim numerous times. It is not true. That number, where he's getting that from, is the total amount of U.S. military spending in Afghanistan for like 20 years. And for some needed context, a lot of that was left for the Afghan army, which was supposed to defend against the Taliban and defend the Afghan government. And they everything basically collapsed immediately. Taliban took over immediately. So they always leave that out. They just act like we just left a bunch of stuff there. That's not what happened. He does go about this Arlington Cemetery incident at length and basically makes it about himself. Like, poor me, I just went up there because they asked me to, and they just said, oh, can we do a picture? And I would never use that in a campaign ad, and yada, yada, yada. And then he says something horrible. He says basically that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris both pretty much essentially just killed those 13 service members as if they shot him in the face, basically. I'm paraphrasing. But that's basically what he says. Through incompetence. So they basically directly killed them, which is, I think, an outrageous thing to say. And again, Trump has a terrible history. So just a quick review of what Trump has actually said about veterans and our military. So in a 2016 presidential election, he made the remark of, I like people who weren't captured, in reference to Senator John McCain, who was a POW in Vietnam. McCain was tortured in captivity and suffered lifelong disabilities as a result of serving his country. He's pretty much considered a war hero. No matter what you think of the Vietnam War he definitely fought valiantly and does not deserve that kind of treatment. There was also the incident of a World War I cemetery in France where a lot of Americans were buried. And this was from The Atlantic, and there were 4 people with firsthand knowledge of the discussion that day that verified this. And this is the quote. In a conversation with senior staff members on the morning of the scheduled visit, Trump said, "Why should I go to that cemetery? It's filled with losers." In a separate conversation of the same trip, Trump referred to the more than 1,800 Marines who lost their lives in Bella Wood during World War I as suckers for getting killed. And according to reporting by the Washington Post, in 2023, John F. Kelly, the former White House chief of staff under Trump and a 4-star Marine general, issued a statement to CNN that Trump rants our most precious heroes who gave up their lives in America's defense are losers and wouldn't visit their graves in France. So Trump tried to defend himself by saying 25 people confirmed his version of events. He later changed that number to 19, and that has varied. I've heard him say different numbers. But when the Washington Post examined their statements, 11 were not even with Trump when the other staffers claimed he made these statements. The other 8 that Trump says confirm his side of things were members of the White House communications staff. So there you go.
What's your name, sir?
Hi, Alistair Hackett from Spring Lake, New Jersey.
Hey, Alex.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you.
I'm a recent college graduate and am concerned with the growing influence of wokeness in many of our top institutions. We saw General Milley take this to new heights under his leadership in the military. What is your plan to combat radical ideology in the military and in our corporations?
So quick note, that young man does not live in Pennsylvania. So he drove, obviously, or traveled from New Jersey, because he said he was from New Jersey. They're close, but it's not the same state. So this is what Trump says. He says he hated General Milley. He took out ISIS, which, of course, he didn't take out ISIS. ISIS still exists. Then he said he spoke to the real generals. They aren't woke. And then pivoted oddly to, if I don't get elected, everything's going to hell and we're going to be communist. And then he started attacking the fake news media. Now, there's a section I purposely left because it just shows his completely addled brain. Completely addled brain.
The Commonwealth. If you ever call it a state, I've seen their political career ruined by saying the state of Pennsylvania. No, you never want to call it a state. Now, I'll tell you how dishonest they are. They'll take that one little statement where I said the state of Pennsylvania, and they'll play it, the state of Pennsylvania. They'll cut it.
Well, there's one other thing.
Let me just, because they're fake.
So what's funny about that is the man that he introduced as the senatorial candidate for Pennsylvania referred to Pennsylvania as a state. More than once, actually. So what is he talking about, Commonwealth? It was like his rant about New Hampshire. It made no sense. And he makes it like it's super important. Like, oh no, if I say the state of Pennsylvania, they'll come for me. And then he starts trashing the press right here.
On Thursday night, I want to ask you the final question. In 5 nights, you'll be on the stage, not with me, but with Kamala Harris. Now, if I'm going to make a prediction, I think she's going to try and annoy, agitate, irritate, frustrate, and piss you off, to use a phrase. And are you aware of how she debates, and probably every name in the book she can call you, and without giving away your tactic?
Yeah, you don't want to do that.
This is like the leading questions of leading questions. You're going to be on the stage with Kamala Harris, and she's going to pester and annoy you. She's going to try to get you all worked up. You've got to remain calm. As if he can. As if he can remain calm. He can't. He's not even remaining calm in this stupid ridiculousness. So Trump gives a very long, rambling answer about the debate, which doesn't make a ton of sense. It's a lot of poor me, and they're not going to be fair to me, and I've got this strategy, yada, yada, yada. And again, this is pre-taped and edited. And Fox thought this was a good idea to include this incredibly long response. I saved one little tidbit for you because I think it's funny. Here's the tidbit.
We had a lot of different people we had to debate, and we had some great debates. You do remember the Rosie O'Donnell debate. Remember Rosie? Rosie O'Donnell. She's a real great one. Isn't she a great one?
Rosie O'Donnell, ladies and gentlemen. Rosie O'Donnell, because that's what we needed in this. Why aren't we talking about Rosie O'Donnell? I ask myself that every day. you know, I get up in the morning and I say, what would Rosie O'Donnell do? Really, what would she do? I don't know. I think she would maybe talk about her kids or Tom Cruise.
But if you know she's going to try and annoy you, but that's not
Well, I
gonna
think
happen.
we have a bigger problem. I think that ABC will try and annoy me.
I bet that too.
Okay.
President Donald Trump. Thank you, Harrisburg.
I think I'm completely convinced that every time he says, sir, he's just making up a story. I don't think any of his sir stories are real. I don't think a single one is. He will not shut up. Like, there is no substance whatsoever to this ridiculous town hall. Oh, poor me. So when I've done the annotated versions of these and I go through and I call sections poor me, that's what I'm talking about. Accordion hands. Those were some outtakes, you know. I like to throw in some extras. So if you're watching on YouTube, thanks for watching. If you're listening to my podcast, thanks for listening. This is the end. I managed to get an interview that was over, a podcast, whatever you call this thing, this interview with an audience that was over an hour long. I got it under an hour, which is kind of amazing because I cut a lot out. But if you would like to support my work at Decoding Fox News, you can go to my Substack channel at Decoding Fox News. It's $5 a month. $55 for the year. That's the lowest rate Substack offers. I'm also on Patreon. You can become a paid supporter there. Paid supporters and paid subscribers get exclusive content, which varies from week to week. And that's about it. My podcast mascots send their love. You can also check out my work on Twitter, Threads, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Facebook. That's Facebook, that's my fan page specifically, and Blue Sky. And thanks for listening, watching, whatever. See you at the next podcast.